Welcome into the second part of our father-son combo of Al and Gary DeRusha. I am Chris Tubbs. Let's wait no further. Let's go ahead and add Joe and add Al and Gary. And I know we've got some. You guys mentioned the infamous Pine Box interview with Mean Gene. We did a show a couple of months ago, and I didn't get a chance to say this last week, but that promo is my all-time favorite AWA promo. I love the way that it all came together and the Pine Box. And yeah, I have to say that it's kind of fun to hear behind the scenes when you tell me just kind of how Gene was in, how he brought it to life, but then how the idea of it came together with you guys putting it together. So first of all, Al, thank you for your input in putting that together, because that's my all-time favorite promo.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get right into it. You were talking about Andre. I know you got another Andre story, but then I got somebody else that I want to bring up. That we talk about the good, but there's also another one that I want to bring up. But you had another Andre story you were going to tell.
So,
Did you had another Andre story?
oh yeah, we were in Winnipeg, Canada, and somehow Andre found out that it was my birthday. So he made a deal with the manager of the hotel to open up the pool area, and after hours, and Andre had all the food catered in, and he had big bottles of Magnum champagne bottles. He had everything you could think of. We went for 2-3 hours at that pool area, just laughing and having a hell of a great time and telling stories. Andre autographed a Magnum bottle of champagne for me, which I still have in my bar. And Andre took 2 weeks off and went to Paris and brought his family. He was from Grenoble, France, and he would, money was no object. Do what you want to do, and he would take his whole family for 2 weeks, and then that would be it. The rest of the time, he wrestled. His big deal was to play cribbage and drink Cavassier. Andre and I, very seldom did he ever do interviews, but there was a big automobile dealership in Fargo, North Dakota, and he talked. The owner, whatever, was a friend of the mayor of the Fargo, and Andre said, "Okay, I'll come and make a personal appearance," but he wanted me to fly with him, and of course Andre would fly in first class, and he'd have me with him. We'd play cribbage, and he would drink Cavassier, and I think he drank all the Cavassier that they had on the plane, and he could drink and never bothered him. But we were coming down for landing, and we had, some drinks on our table and whatever, and the plane, whoa, right back up again, and everything flew. And what the hell? And we looked back, and there was a snowplow coming right across the runway.
Wow.
And we said, wait a minute, how many planes land in Fargo, North Dakota in the wintertime? What the hell? Somebody messed up on the schedule, and here comes the plow. Boom! That's how close. Wow. And Andre, I think he got so worried he shrunk down to the midget size. I mean, that was really, really something, But anyway, Andre was great, and
Andre, when he was in town, he actually taught me how to play cribbage.
Yeah.
And then when I went to New York and we were producing out there, and he was there. My name was Juice. Juice, let's shoot a game. Juice, let's shoot a game. And him and Arnie Skolin and I were the only ones that he played cribbage with. I mean, all the boys played cribbage, but Andre had his favorite to play with. And Arnie Skolin and myself out in New York were the ones that he played. He loved to play cribbage, but Andre's the one that taught me how to play cribbage.
Gary, how did you get your nickname Juice?
Well, long story short, my brother Greg, when I was a little boy, called me Smable Juice, and no idea where it came from. But then as I got into the wrestling and being a little boy and a little kid around the studio, and then with wrestling, it just, my nickname was Smable or Juice, and then obviously Get the Juice.
Well, that's what I thought it was from.
No, and then it turned into that, and so sometimes they'd say Get the Juice, and I thought I was going to take a bump. Gary Blackwell is the one that actually used it a lot, because he would get the juice a lot, and he wouldn't care. I would carry his blade for him. So when you see my wrists were taped up, I had the blade in there. And so when we got to the point, they'd say, Get the Juice. Well, no, it was Gary handing Blackwell his blade to get the juice, but that it stuck on. When I went to New York, I started in St. Louis down at the, we did a taping down at the St. Louis hotel down there. That's when Vince McMahon first started. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother episode, but it just stuck with me. And Vince McMahon thought it was great. And my business cards from the WWE or WWF at the time was Gary Juice DeRusha. And so it's always stuck with me. And but the original name came from my brother Greg as Smable Juice, and then as I got smartened up in the business, it stuck with me as Juice.
So Al, we talked about the Pine Box interview. It is my most requested interview. When somebody wants to see an old clip, it's always Mad Dog and Gene doing to boot. But there's another interview that I had the fortune to be involved with. We did it at the AWA studio. The interview started with Larry Nelson interviewing you about small town promotions, and you had a surprise guest that, shall we say, burst onto the scene by the name of the Blaster. Can you tell us a little bit about that interview?
The interview with the Blaster.
Oh, well, when we first started out, Roger and I doing spot shows, Vern would not allow us or the wrestlers to do an interview. We couldn't mention the town we were going to, even though we were giving him 60% of the house. And we still did very well, even without being able to plug the upcoming towns. And finally, Vern, we'd given him so much money. He said, well, okay, well, what we did is you go on with Larry Nelson, and Larry will ask you how they can get in touch with you to bring wrestling to their town. And I was doing an interview with Larry, and yeah, that's right. And if you want wrestling to come to your town, later on, Roger Kent will tell you how to get wrestling, blah, blah, blah. And we're doing the interview. And all of a sudden, bam, the whole set just exploded. The wall or whatever scared the hell out of me and Larry Nelson. Larry didn't know it was coming at all. And what's the matter with you? You broke the wall. And
He
he
jumps up and
screamed
down. You
jumped
broke
up
the
and down.
wall.
You broke the wall. You, oh God, that was a great. That was a good interview. That was really
So a little behind the scenes.
another.
A little
One
behind the
other
scenes on that
interview.
one, Al. A little
What's
behind
that,
the
Joe?
scenes on the Blaster interview wall. So at the AWA, where we did the interviews, my dad had done some construction. My dad was a master carpenter, master cabinet maker by trade. And so he built the wall. And so we didn't tell you or Larry that we were going to have the Blaster come through because we wanted a genuine reaction. So we had, we had the wall gimmicked a little bit, but apparently not enough. And the sheetrock, Gary broke through the wall. Gary Lindgren was the Blaster. And he broke through the wall and he ended up getting cuts underneath his arm from having to break through because we didn't gimmick it enough. But yes, I was running camera on that interview. I got surprised because I didn't know exactly when he was going to bust through. But your and Larry's reaction, priceless. Again, the second most asked interview question that I get.
Yeah,
That's funny.
yeah.
So
it was great. I was thinking of I was going to tell another interview with Wally and Bobby Heenan. How the heck? Oh, the what's his name? The president of the AWA.
Stanley Blackburn.
Okay, thank you. Stanley Blackburn sent a telegram to the wrestling office. It was a work, it was a setup. And it read that Bobby Heenan, because of his interference in the matches and whatever, and he is permanently out of wrestling. We're going to cancel his manager's license, and we don't want him in the arena and whatever. And Mean Gene was interviewing Wally, and they had me come in and read the telegram. And Wally walks off, and in comes Bobby Heenan screaming and hollering, and all upset the way he does. And he leaves in a tantrum, and Wally comes in and said, "Yes, Gene, that's true, and he better not ever show up his face again."
Don't show up your face.
Don't
pal.
show up your face.
So, I know we want to get into some rapid questions here, or something that you had talked about, Chris. So maybe this would be a good time to switch over to those questions.
Yeah, before we do that, I want to ask you, Gary, like, what was your favorite refereeing moment? Like, was there one for you that really stands out as being memorable?
There's so many of them. I can talk about the Showboat. Joe, you were there. The other referee didn't show up. I did 21 TV matches and then turned around and had to do an hour Broadway with Nick Bockwinkel and Kurt Hennig, which was, one of the top. And then we took that and we went to the Cow Palace, and that's where we did the spot with Larry Zbyszko and the Dimes and all that. One of the other ones was out in Denver in the cage match. But I got to be honest with you, one of the best orchestrated, fun matches I did was when we were doing Wrestle Rock, and we went to the Salt Lake City Salt Palace, wasn't it, Joe? Salt Palace in Salt Lake.
Yep.
And we were doing Wrestle Rock, and we had the main event was Kurt Hennig against Ric Flair. And we went out there, and we had the Wrestle Rock. It was not Motley Crue.
Molly Hatchet.
What Molly Hatchet? Thank you. Boy, you talk about partying. Woo! Did we have a good time? Any event, Kurt and Ric Flair went out there and probably there was no word spoken. Nobody was calling the match. Nobody had to do anything. We really didn't have a finish. We just kind of went out there. And I did my job, and it was fun. You never heard Kurt call a spot. You never heard Flair call a spot. They just went out there, and the two talented people that they were it's got to be one of the. It wasn't one of the most televised. I mean, we've done a lot of that stuff, and I was known for taking bumps and da 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 da. But at the end of the day, one of the most fun, uncalled, unscripted match was Kurt Hennig against Ric Flair in Salt Lake City. It was phenomenal.
Man.
You know what I remember, unfortunately, is that we had the additional Wrestle Rocks, but we never recorded them. Salt Lake and Denver, those were just all house shows, no TV.
No, we should have.
Yeah, well, exactly. But those to me were really more Wrestle Rock, because for the original Wrestle Rock, we had Waylon Jennings.
Yeah. That was.
Oh, that's right.
And there's some stories behind that. But at the end of the day, Joe, after Salt Lake City, we went up and did that. I think it was right after Vegas. I think we went to Salt Lake, and then we went up to what's the other gambling town up in Nevada?
Reno?
No, yeah, Reno, Nevada.
Yeah.
And that's where we did the John Madden football birthday party up there. And that's where this goes when the Midnight Rockers were around.
Oh boy.
And boy, if we could have had that event on tape, people would say, no way is this possible that this should happen. But yeah, we did. I mean, if you only knew now what you knew then, right?
Yeah.
Things that took place. But yeah, that Ric Flair and Kurt Hennig match, that was fun. It was just unscripted. Go have fun, do your job, and I think we went 40 minutes.
Jeez. Well, I know that we've got some time. I've got a million more questions, even though, I mean, Al, I've heard so many stories from both of you over the years, and I'm not exaggerating. We could do 8 episodes of this and still not have all of the stories.
Oh, easily. Like I'm floored. Like I'm just sitting here like a kid in a candy shop. I'm loving this. Like this is what the podcast is about. Like hearing this stuff. Like this stuff's cool, man. I love it.
But let's get into, because I want to make sure there are so many wrestlers that we have worked with over the years, and you guys more than I have. You started in the business before I did. So I want to do, you could call it rapid fire, but we don't have to be so rapid about it. But we'll try to keep the story short so that we can cover as many of them as we can. So I want to start with you, Al. Ric Flair, what was it like?
Ric Flair went through Vern Gagne's training camp and wrestled here for a while, and he had some problems with Vern, and Rick said, okay, I'm out of here. I'm getting out. And we had a going away party for Rick, and Wahoo and a bunch of guys were there. But anyway, you remember the song, Tie a Yellow Ribbon Around the Old Oak Tree. And right in the middle of the party, when everything's going great, here comes Rick, bare-ass naked, with a yellow ribbon tied around his old oak tree.
And you know why he was called the Nature Boy?
Yeah.
Because of that?
Well, no, because he would be undressed all the time.
The natural boy.
Yeah, the Nature Boy. That's how he got his name.
I went to his first wrestling match after he came through Vern's camp, and Vern would book like Ric Flair and other people that went through his camp for the first match to get used to being in in an arena atmosphere and get used to the people and whatever. And Ric Flair's first match was in Eau Claire, and he rolled down with me, Greg Gagne, and Jim Brunzell. And on the way home, we stopped, had a few canoopers, a few drinks, and we go. Rick left and went out the outside, and we're where the hell did he go? And so we all getting ready to go. We go out there, and there's Rick. They had a big sign for the bar, and there's Rick with his pants down and relieving himself on the sign. The name. He was something else.
So Gary, next one for you. One of my favorites, the guy who I've called the most opposite wrestler. And that is where what he was like in real life versus what his persona was completely different, but he was a master at both. My dear friend, Baron von Raschke.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you brought that up. Aaron, the Baron at his interviews would always end with, and that's all the people need to know. And he was doing an interview for one of the markets, and he's going on, and he actually, in his mind, he ran out of time. He didn't know what else to say. So he said, and that's all the people need to know. And that's how that started. And later on, I don't know if you can see this or not, it's Baron's shot glass.
So, oh, yeah.
The Baron came out with his own shot glass. That is all the people need to know. So sure, down below, they have the scrap iron shot. Then they have the Mad Dog shot. Then they have the Crusher shot. And then, of course, all the way to the top, it's Baron von Raschke's Attitude Adjuster. I got to tell you a story. And Joe, you're absolutely right. The Baron is a character that will never, ever, ever be. No. Nobody, you could never duplicate that. And Jim Raschke outside the ring is one of the nicest, kindest, quiet, and Joe, you know as well as I do, quietest, friendliest guy you'll ever meet.
With an incredibly dry sense of humor that is second to none.
And then, boom, you can flip the switch and he's back to being the Baron. And so I'm going to go back to when I was a little kid. When we were at Care 11 Studios, they used to have the cooking show in the other studio. Well, when Baron would go to do the claw, I was the kid out back in the back of the other studio. I was actually boiling and softening up the apples, and so that when Baron he'd be able to crush an apple. Well, it was my job as to go to the kitchen and get them nice and soft so that he could smash them through the screen when we had the cage match, or smash them with his hands. And we sat one day later on in life, we would go to this, and Jim Raschke and his bride Bonnie, who is just a phenomenal woman.
Mrs. Claw.
What's that?
Mrs. Claw.
Yeah. Bonnie is just classic. And there's so many Raschke stories you could tell. And one of his favorite was when he's out having a good time or whatever, he says, and Bonnie thinks I'm having fun. But Baron and I sat down in a little hotel in Alma, Wisconsin, called the Hillcrest. And I hadn't seen I call him the Bear. We sat down and I brought a cooler, and it had a case of beer in it. And I said, well, Bear, let's have a beer. Well, after that case was gone, we decided to get on the party bus. But yeah, we sat and drank a case of beer and BS'd. And he was always fun to be in to referee. I mean, we have stored. My dad traveled with him forever,
Oh,
but yeah, the bear is totally opposite to your point, Joe.
I still get a Christmas card every year from Jim and Bonnie. You know, he, like Gary said, he would come out of character a lot when we were partying and having a good time, and he would sing his favorite NEBRAS, you know, Nebraska.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red. Yeah, well, we went to that premiere movie that his son Carl produced, and we were all there. We've got a photo of the Gary and Greg and Glenn and myself with the Baron, and he was well, you know, on our broadcast Hall of Fame video, they ended up with it, and that's all the people need to know. You know?
So you talk about somebody that is spitting image of his dad is C. Carl Raschke, just like his dad.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
man.
next question.
Another name. It's tough to argue that he is probably, not probably, the most famous wrestler that's been around. Maybe not the greatest technically, but the one incredible Hulk Hogan.
Huh. Well, so right after Rocky III. Now, we talked about Andre the Giant, right?
Yep.
Well, the producers of the movie Rocky III wanted Andre to do the Hulk Hogan role in Rocky III. And Andre didn't like the finish and what it was standing for. And he says, you know, I got a guy. He says, his name's Terry Bollea. Here's his phone number. Call him. So right after Rocky III, Hulk came to Minneapolis. And I was still producing and directing and along with my dad, but Terry really couldn't talk. He not a very good interviewer. So, and he didn't trust a lot of people because he was new, and you know, he was Sterling Golden down in Florida, but when he came, he got Hulk Hogan, and I learned from my dad, like Gene Okerlund, him teaching Gene Okerlund. Terry and I hooked up right away. For some reason, the chemistry was just there. And I would ride with him in his car to the town. Sound familiar? Geez, I wonder where I learned that from. In the event, we started doing interviews, and he had a Lincoln Continental. I can't remember what year it was, but it had a CB radio. Okay, that's how far back it goes. But we were practicing on the CB radio. And so I would ask him questions. This is where we came up with the whoa, Mean Gene. It's like a 747 coming in for a landing. He'd come in with his arms. We came up with Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting. We came up, you know, break those chains that bind me. And what you gonna do when Hulkamania runs wild?
How about ripping the t-shirt?
Ripping the t-shirt. I would sit. While we were driving, I'd sit and cut the t-shirt, so he'd rip them open. But the name Hulkamania came. We were driving from La Crosse, Wisconsin. We're going to La Crosse, Wisconsin. We used to have to stop in Cannon Falls at Barney's Chicken. We love the chicken there. So we always say, and he'd say, hey, Juice, we got to stop at Bizzardi's. And so but we were driving home that night, and we were still practicing interviews. And I came up, I was the announcer, and I said, it's like Hulkamania is running wild. And he said, what'd you just say? I said, it's like Hulkamania running wild. He goes, that's it. We're going to run with it. So that went on, and I still, for the years, you know, we worked on all different kinds of interviews, and he finally, you know, he just got it everything just clicked on after he was here and building them up. And then, you know, Vern wanted to make him a heel, and that's when he brought in the manager,
Luscious Johnny Valentine.
Luscious Johnny Valentine, and the people, you know, they just didn't respond to him as a heel. And then I came up with some music and videos of him and da 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 da. And, you know, I still get a lot of people that say, hey, I ran into Hulk Hogan and asked him if he knew who Gary DeRusha was. He goes, you mean Juice out of Twin Cities? Are you kidding me? He says, and he used to call my dad Alskins.
Yeah, hey,
So
Alskins.
I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but then the venture went on where we were doing so well in the AWA and we were selling everything out. And then, of course, we were going to drop the belt to him, but the Vern wanted a part of Terry's money out of Japan because Terry was huge in Japan. So long story short, we came up with an idea to have a couple of different television shows and have some, you know, different champions. Well, we got Greg Gagne was television champion, but we came up with the ideas and Vern didn't want to invade the territories. Well, after he said no, Vince McMahon flew in and we met at Terry's house out in Bloomington and we laid out the saga and Vince says, absolutely. And so we started with USA Wrestling. Remember that program was on
Pro Wrestling USA.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I would send tapes to Vince from our library, if you will. And I'd always send Hulk matches. So then, long story short, I went to New York when Terry left. It's funny, we're at the Chicago Rosemont Horizon and I was running the show, you know, with Greg and everything and just, you know, coordinating everything. Well, Vince got a hold of me and we sent the photographer from Titan Sports at the time. It wasn't called WWE. It was Titan Sports. We set up all the interviews and the pictures of Hulk beating the Sheik as the champion downstairs in the Rosemont Horizon in the basement before and we were working for Vern and we're setting the stage in the Rosemont Horizon. So then Terry and I went out together to WWE and we had 52 TV stations at the time and they were on the bicycle system, which you know what it is. So I set it up. I went to Baltimore, Maryland and bought a production studio and long story short, in 2 weeks, we had 200 stations and we got it all done. But when you talk about Hulk Hogan and what he became, the icon, I think the only number one recognized sports athlete of all time was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Now I think probably Dwayne Johnson, which is another story about the Wild Samoans, would be I think is probably topping Terry because of all his movies in Hollywood. But Terry was one of the first ones that did a lot of Hollywood scenes. And, you know, I remember I was in New York. He calls me, he says, Juice, you got to go to the house. I was the only one that had a key to his house in New York. So I go over there. He says, you got to send me all my stuff. He said, this character they have is bullshit. And so I talked to the producer and gave him some ideas. And then we sent Hulk's wrestling stuff and his T-shirts and his boots. And we just made it happen. That's when he was doing Thunder and Paradise or whatever. So anyways, we could talk about Hulk all the time. Still a class gentleman. He still gives me credit for a lot that I have done for him. And, you know, the next time I see him, they'll say, Juice, let's have a cocktail.
Yeah, he came up to see me and when I was having my back surgery.
Yep.
He came up to the hospital and to see me and visit. And he did, what are you going to do when the Hulkster is after you and Elskin? Yeah, it was a great guy. Gary knew him a heck of a lot more than I did, but the time I was around the Hulk here at the AWA, and I went to New York for a short time and couldn't stand all the traveling and the hoo-ha. My back went out again, and I said, okay, I got to give this up. But I had fun with the Hulk. He was a good guy.
Okay, another name. When somebody asks me about him, the first thing that pops into my mind is he had the most infectious guttural laugh I've ever heard. Absolutely loved working with him. The gentleman I'm referring to is none other than Ray the Crippler Stevens.
Oh yeah, Ray. Well, my dad can answer that one. Ray the Crippler Stevens.
Oh,
You could
okay.
spend an hour just talking about Ray the Crippler.
Yeah, he and Pat Patterson. You know, in fact, there's the
That's right.
photo of Ray, the Crippler. He and I got along really well as Gary did with him. He was a master. He was kind of like a Bobby Heenan. He would come back with some quick little flips, you know, and he was always laughing and having a great time. He was the kind of guy that money didn't mean anything to him. He just wanted to have a good time, you know. And like out at the showboat in Las Vegas, you'd find Ray sitting at the bar and he's got his, you know, he's throwing the money down and buying drinks. And, you know, he was just, he didn't worry about anything. You know what I'm saying?
He was a man's man, if you will.
Yeah.
He did whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. Inside the ring, one of the most technical, scientific. I mean, him and Pat Patterson were brought in to put Brunzell and Gagne over to make, and this was later in their careers, and they did a phenomenal job. Ray the Crippler Stevens, he was a part of that Larry Zbyszko, Nick Bockwinkel story we were talking about out in what's the name of the auditorium in San Francisco? The South
Cow Palace.
Ray the Crippler and Pat Patterson still have the attendance record in the Cow Palace for a professional wrestling event. But Ray the Crippler, you talk about somebody that wants to have left. We could spend another half hour talking just about all the ribs he did. All the boys. Oh, yeah. But
Joe, you remember when they used to hide and scare each other?
Oh,
little cat stuff.
Pat was
day.
laughing.
There was a contest as to who could flip off who first.
Right.
Yeah. And the one quick story I have about Ray about that, doing interview day, and remember the 10,001 Wayzata Boulevard office. Oh, there's
right.
Pat. But
there's Pat.
I hid on Ray outside. In fact, it was on top. Remember, the entrance is a little overhang. Yep. I was up on top, and it was wintertime, warm enough where I could do it. I was waiting for Ray because I knew he had interview day. So I hid up there. Ray comes walking in. I jump down, flip him off, double bird. He goes and flies back into the bushes that were right outside the front door. After he gets done being dazed, he just looks at me, and again, that infectious guttural laugh. He just goes, "You fucking Polak," and just started laughing. That we did every single day.
Oh, and then later on, when both Wahoo McDaniels and Ray were in the office, all the stories, and going over to their house, they had a house down in St. Louis Park, and the ribs that Wahoo and Ray would pull on each other, just priceless.
Well, those two, when they were rooming together, it was literally like having two high school kids together. Yep. They love to play very hard, shall we say.
There you go.
Okay, so another name. We talked about Patterson and Stevens. I'd be remiss if I didn't get your reaction on dear friend of mine and yours, I know. The one, I say the one and only. I mean, they're all one and only, but this guy, Mr. Nicholas Bach.
Oh, Nicholas Bockwinkel, nine-time AWA heavyweight champion, Nick Bockwinkel.
Yeah. There he is.
Go ahead and take that one, Dad.
You'd ask the old saying was, we'd have fun. You ask Nick what time it is, and he'd tell you how to build a watch. You know, he that again. What a great guy, great technician. Probably one of the best interviews. You know, the humanoids, the 8 to 5 six packers, whatever. He would come up with interviews. He was amazing, and you know, he had the respect of every wrestler in the territory. They understood Nick, and you know, he was a very intelligent guy. I mean, he came across on his interviews, but Nick was that way. You know,
Nick, it wasn't a character. That's really who Nick was.
yes, that's it. On in the ring and out of the ring, he was Nick Bockwinkel. He always called me Alley Cat. Hey, Alley Cat. He had that aluminum.
Halliburton.
Yeah.
Halliburton. You know who he gave that? I still have. Nick Bockwinkel gave me his very first Halliburton suitcase.
Yeah.
It was the gold one. I still have it. I still have my wrestling boots in my at my home. Obviously, I'm never going to get rid of it. But Nicholas Bockwinkel, oh, here, Juice, this is for you. Thanks for all you do. And he said, this has been mine since my career started, and I want to pass it on to you, his Halliburton suitcase. We talk about, you know, trusting and Vern with the belt and who he can trust and who he can't trust. Well, that's why Nick was brought in, and that was his whole career, was putting over Vern or doing a job for Vern, or, you know, controversy with Heenan so that Vern didn't have to do a job. And so, I mean, he was 9-time champion and for years. One of the biggest things we talked about Hulk Hogan was Nick Bockwinkel put Hogan over and over and over and over. And Hulk appreciated what Nick did for him very much. He actually named his son Nicholas.
Well,
Nicholas Bolea.
You brought up, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, the single greatest overall performer in the history of the business. Give me your thoughts and words on Bobby the Brain.
Well, my dad probably, you know, he shared the story earlier about Bobby Heenan, but as my dad said, he was phenomenal. I mean, his interviews were tremendous. My dad had a relationship with Bobby and his wife Cindy.
Yeah.
Was it Cindy?
Yeah,
And then they finally had a little girl, right?
Yep.
And so, you know, that goes way, way back. And traveling, my dad did a lot with them. And go ahead, you want to interject?
Oh no, I was going to say Roger Kent and I went to Bobby Heenan's wedding, and we instead of throwing rice, we were throwing popcorn at him, you know. And Bobby and Nick, of course, lived here locally, so we got together a lot, including playing golf. Many times.
We went to one time. We had Pat Patterson and Louis Dondero, Pat's partner, and Ray. It was Roger Buck, Pat Patterson, Nick, and Heenan, and we all went out to the Met Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
And we had a tailgate party out of Nick's van. And so we had, you know, cooking, whatever. And then we went into the stadium, and Bobby was drinking beer, and we were kind of down behind home plate. And Heenan said, fuck that, I'm not going way up there. So he starts peeing in the cup, the beer cup. And so so he didn't have to walk all the way up to the top to go to the bathroom. He just started peeing in the cup at the stadium. But Bobby Heenan, when we all, again, we can tell a ton of AWA stories, but when he went to New York and they were going to do a manager job and whatever, But then when he got behind the camera, starting to do the play-by-play and the color with Gorilla Monsoon.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they were a team that, and Heenan just, I mean, he was better than when Jesse was there. Heenan brought it to, you always got to talk about the next level, the next level, the next level. Well, Bobby Heenan brought that with him and Gorilla Monsoon. They really did an unbelievable job. And Bobby really became, very, very, he was paid very, very well. And it was hard. It was hard for Bobby to leave Vern because of his loyalty. But at the end of the day, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
I flew to New York with Bobby. First time.
Yep.
And Bobby was, really, like you just said, leaving Vern, leaving the territory. He had second thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're having a few cocktails on the plane, and Bobby gets off the plane, and he said, "I'm not going there." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I thought it over. I don't want to leave. I'm comfortable where I'm at,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going into something that I really don't know, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, "Bobby, you're here. Yeah, go and talk with Vince and whatever." And I not toot my own horn, but I was pretty much instrumental in having Bobby make up his mind to stay in New York.
Yeah,
and that's a true story, and the rest is history.
I've got two more names, and then we're going to have to unfortunately get this wrapped up.
No problem.
Gary, I guess these are going to be more for you because it was during our time, and I say our time in the 80s for myself.
The next generation.
So forth. Exactly. The two names, I'm going to save the single guy for last, but I want to talk about a tag team.
I know.
My God, the stories that we can tell about Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the Midnight Rockers.
Well, we used to call them the Midnight Lockers because in the spot shows in the high schools, they used to take and pick locks while they were waiting for their matches to see if they could get the locks. And then, funny, we were talking about the Battle Royal. We had Silo Sam. Remember Silo Sam?
Pennsylvania.
So the Midnight Rockers would take the locks off, and then we'd hog pile for the Battle Royal. And every time the Silo Sam would come out with the locks on his back. And then the one time, remember Medusa Michelli?
Yeah.
So the Midnight Rockers put a lock on her hood ornament of her Cadillac. And she'd be driving down the road, and Kurt Hennig goes, "Look, it's the tea kettle effect." But I got to tell you, Marty Jannetty came first, and Shawn came second. They also brought back very, very nice man, dearly miss him, DJ Peterson.
Yeah.
And that's another story for another day. But Marty and Shawn were that next generation. And they brought in probably the best pair that they could bring in to put them over and make matches. Joe, which we know are phenomenal ones, was Buddy Rose and Doug Summers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we used to do apartment wrestling. We would go over to Summers and Rose apartment over on 494, me and Marty, and we would stage out our matches. We called it apartment wrestling. And so Marty was actually a better wrestler than Shawn in his early years. And then Shawn started, he was very, very athletic. And then Shawn, which is, they ended up, we know the story in New York, but some of and then Marty and Shawn, when we'd stay in the hotels, they'd frickin' set the fire alarms at 2-3 in the morning, wake up the whole place, and they just stay there in their bed and sleep. I got to tell you one story though, real quick, about the Midnight Lockers. So DJ Peterson and I got into his room, and we had a padlock, And so we were going to get Janetti back. So we're leaving from Vegas somewhere, and we had to catch a plane. Well, we figured we're going to get Janetti back one way or another. So we snuck into the room. We took the padlock. We locked his bag to the drawer of the dresser, right? So here we're sitting on the plane. Here comes Marty Janetti. He's got the drawer from the hotel. And he just naturally just dragging along, right? And he's got the drawer. It's dragging behind him. So he grabs the drawer, sets it down, puts his bag in the drawer, opens up, slides it in, closes it, sits down, and never batted an eye. But yeah, I mean, the Midnight Rockers. We talked about that, the John Madden birthday, where we didn't videotape it, which we should have, is where the Rockers first dropped the belt to Rose and Summers. I can't remember what year it was, but I was the referee, obviously. Well, Janetti said, "Get the juice." So he starts hammering me because I made a bad call. You know, the foot was on the rope. I should have caught that, but I didn't. And so they won the belt. So then Janetti hits me, picks me up, slams me. Shawn Michaels gets up on the top rope and drops his elbow on me. And you never felt the thing. I mean, Shawn, some of the matches that out in New York with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, a lot of them were shoots, but they really did. Shawn Michaels turned out to be, Heartbreak Kid, and Michael Shawn Hickenbottom is his name.
Yep.
And he went by Shawn Michaels. His dad was in the Air Force, general in the Air Force or whatever, but got to spend a lot of time with those two, with DJ and then Rose and Summers. And that was the era when, it was just, we could go two tapes of this to talk about the Midnight Rockers.
Can I interject one thing? Gary talked about Shawn Michaels coming into the territory, and as again, Vern would not put him on the card, but he would show up as a match on unadvertised and just whatever. And Vern would did that with Jerry Fatwell and other wrestlers, and then it was my spot show. It was at the Riverside Arena in Austin, Minnesota, and it was happened to be on St. Patrick's Day, and that's when Shawn Michaels made his first appearance on my spot show. And I introduced him as, boy, we're fortunate on St. Patty's Day, we got Shawn Michaels, it is, when I introduced him. But and then later on, the rest is history,
My dad and I saw him out at Cauliflower Alley, Shawn Michaels, and for those of you that he gave his life over to the Lord, and he's fighting, and he was very, very nice and pleasant to us. And the one that Shawn contributes a lot of his success was again from Pat Patterson.
Yeah.
And Pat Patterson actually, made me go through and work with me on the gestures of being a referee, because they used to go 1, 2, 3. You got to go 1, 2, And so Shawn paid a great tribute to Pat Patterson, as well as, he taught me a lot about refereeing and that out in New York. And so the Midnight Rockers. Sorry.
One more name. I know we're getting short on time, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring his name up. Just recently, I can't believe it's been 20 years, but Mr. Kurt Hennig.
Mr. Perfect. One of the best all-time ribbers you've ever met in your life. From the poopy diapers and the back seat at outings, and his kids, they'd have poopy diapers, and he was always known for poopy diapers. I go back with Kurt Henning, Larry the Axe Henning, and my dad. We go back to, we're 15, 16 years old, fishing up in Canada with Al Tomko and the promotion up there. But I'm going to tell you the one thing that I know about Kurt Henning. Kurt Henning learned the business outside the ring. He learned the business inside the ring. And then what he did is then he worked on his body. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of reverse of what these guys do now. But Kurt Henning and his lovely wife, Lenice, were, I mean, they lived on an apartment out in Portland, Oregon, on a cooler for a kitchen table. Kurt was, what do you say? He thrived at the business, being around his dad. His very first match was in Elk River, Minnesota, at his old high school, and I got a picture of him when he was young. But Kurt Henning, again, scientific. We talked about New York. Kurt Henning and Bret the Hitman Hart had some very, very big matches that were shoots. And Kurt Henning also had a shoot with Brock Lesnar, which turned out. But you know what you can tell a boy from Minnesota? Not much. That was Kurt Henning. And Kurt was a proud father, loved his wife, loved the business, loved ribbing the boys. But one of the things, and Joe, I remember when we brought Jimmy Snuka in out at Vegas, Jimmy Superfly, we actually sat with Kurt and talked about, you know, what he has to learn. And Snuka was the one that would always say, you have to learn the business outside the ring to be successful. Well, then when he went to New York, obviously he had his run here with, you know, he became the champion with the Larry Zbyszko. Larry and him worked very, very well together.
And Wahoo.
And we did that match with at the Showboat, the strap match with Wahoo and Kurt. And the finish was Adrian Adonis was supposed to come in and cut the strap. Well, Wahoo snitched down a little bit too hard, and Kurt was holding on, and Adonis cut Kurt's finger off. And I was the referee. I grabbed the finger, threw it in a bag, and ran it into the dressing room and put it in ice to hold it. And the finish was over. The first thing I did was grab it, and it saved his finger. But yeah, Kurt was a master. He just loved being in the ring, but he also loved being out of the ring, ribbing the boys. I mean, him and Wahoo got into some. Wahoo would slash Kurt's tires. Kurt Henning went by a hotel we were up north doing, and I think it was in Grand Forks at the State Fair up there. Kurt Henning got a hold of Roman candles, and Wahoo and Stevens are sharing a room. It was one of those outdoor hotels, and here's Kurt Henning with the freaking Roman candle, shooting them at the door. The freaking door started on fire. And, but Kurt is, you know, just a great guy. Unbelievable father. We ran into Lenice 3 weeks ago at the promotion that Mick Karsh put on. But yeah, Kurt was, then he went to New York, obviously became Mr. Perfect. And yeah, he was an athlete. There's nothing he couldn't do. He couldn't, I mean, you saw the videotape we put together for Mr. Perfect in New York with him shooting the basketball, hitting baseballs, bowling. I mean, there's nothing he couldn't do. I mean, he was a natural born athlete.
Yeah. And he would let you know about it.
What's that?
He would let you know about it too.
Oh yeah, no, it was perfect gimmick. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's where he came up. What can you tell a boy from Minnesota? Not much.
Yeah. He was also one of the luckiest guys. Every time we were doing, you know, he would buy pull tabs.
Oh yeah,
and win.
Oh yeah.
it was just.
He had a horseshoe in his ass.
Yeah.
Oh, I've told the 14 story about Kurt and I many times. See, I agree with you. But hey, gentlemen, I'm getting the wrap up signal. I would love to have you guys back on again. I'm not kidding. We could probably do a minimum of 8 episodes with all of the stories.
Oh, easily. And I'm sure we've only scratched the surface with.
Oh yeah, we haven't. Yeah, but you know, I'll take the time to say thank you for what you're doing. It's fun to reminisce about the AWA because it really was, as my dad mentioned before, one of the biggest territories that, you know, in the United States. And it wasn't just Minnesota, it was, you know, Wisconsin, Utah, Nevada, you know. So it's been a pleasure to be here. Anytime you want us back, probably not after this one, they'll say, we don't want those guys back. But we could shoot an angle and come back next week and talk about it. But thank you very much for having us. It's been our pleasure. And it's been an unbelievable opportunity to grow up in this business, and how honored I am to be my dad's son. It's been a great run.
Well, gentlemen,
and as the Baron would say, that's all the people need to know.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your friendship over these many years. I can't wait to have you back on again, and I think that we'll get that scheduled.
We got a lot of stories that about just about everybody. I would say that any wrestler that you can name came through the AWA, and I don't care who it is, they got their start here, and you know, it's great. Thank you,
gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. We're just gonna take them out of the stream, but we'll leave them connected. Joe, I mean, there were so many stories there that I know we could have gotten so much deeper into. Again, there's such the joy about Al and Gary is that you've got the entire timeline of the AWA covered. And it's so hard nowadays to get a firsthand perspective of everything and to have it. I mean, I was just sitting here and I loved every minute of every story that they told.
They've got stories that I don't, because they traveled to the small towns. When I was with the AWA, I was doing production. Right. So if there was a TV taping or if we needed to record an event, I was there during my time. But these two, they promoted. Gary refereed, Al refereed. They lived it more than I did. And the stories that said earlier, we could do 8 hours. I'm not exaggerating. There are stories that I know that Al has told me and Juice have told me that we could have added into here, but time limit draw, right, Chris?
Yeah, we went the Broadway plus the extra 5 minutes that the referee allowed us, another 5 minutes. So this was great. We're definitely going to get him back on again because we have not. I have a feeling we have not even scratched the surface.
Not even close.
Let's go ahead and take care of some business here. First of all, you can see the 7th Avenue Pizza banner up there on the upper right-hand corner. If you're watching it on YouTube, now that we're getting it, it's getting a little bit warmer. We'll get you into your, your AWA swag here in just a minute. But, one thing I like to do, I like to grill my pizza. I don't know if you guys have ever done it. If you grill your pizza, 7th Avenue Pizza, we're getting to the point where, you can start grilling a little bit. 7thAvenuePizza.com. You can find it all over the Twin Cities. It's great frozen pizza. It doesn't even taste frozen. They've got a brand new breakfast pizza. They've got a meatball and pepperoni that I love. It's just a great selection. Again, check them out, 7thAvenuePizza.com. If you don't know where it's at, just go ahead and, leave us a comment. Hit us up on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Also mention Soda Stick. Soda Stick, they are the place to get your officially branded, officially licensed AWA Unleashed gear and you can get the hoodie. Still a little cool. You can get your hoodie with your personalized name, your gimmick, as they would say. But you can go ahead and get that. Use the promo code AWA Unleashed. I think actually just used Unleashed, and that'll be your 15% off on that. Let's go ahead and get to our shout outs here, and then we'll go ahead and wrap her up. Joe, what you got?
Real quick, Brian Ferguson from Bumps and Thumps podcast. He had me on recently, and as I love doing here, I love doing it with them, talking about the old AWA, the major league of professional wrestling.
That's right. And I'm going to thank Ralph Harkey. Ralph's always watching on YouTube and always giving us feedback and always commenting. So we love it, Ralph. Thank you so much for being a loyal subscriber. And hey, that's going to wrap it up. Hopefully next time, we'll give Mick shit, give him a hard time. But at the end of the day, Mick, we hope you're feeling better physically. We hope you're feeling better with your illness, your little bout that you had. And hopefully Mick will be back next week. That it?
That works.
Okay. Well, I guess that's the end of the podcast. So we'll catch you next week, guys. Okay. Bye.